It was a muddy afternoon in New Orleans after an unforgiving downpour had turned the roads into a network of murky puddles. The air was thick, the clouds still low, and the wind carried the scent of wet concrete. Uncle Jeremiah sat quietly on a rickety wooden bench near the side of a narrow street. His broom leaned against the corner of a small shuttered barber shop he had just finished sweeping. His clothes were modest, his slippers frayed from years of wear, and his straw hat slightly tilted forward to shield his eyes from the sun that had finally begun peeking through the clouds. People passed by without noticing him. To them, he was part of the backdrop, another elderly man in worn clothes resting by the roadside. But Uncle Jeremiah was at peace, his work done, his heart light, his thoughts drifting softly like the clouds above. He reached into his pocket for a small sachet of peanuts he had saved for later when it happened. A black Range Rover burst through the narrow street, its tires slicing a massive puddle without slowing. A surge of dirty water shot out and drenched Uncle Jeremiah from head to toe. His shirt clung to his chest, his trousers stuck to his knees, and his slippers squished beneath his feet. He gasped softly, more from the shock than the cold, and reached up with trembling hands to wipe the mud from his face. For a moment, the world paused. Bystanders froze, eyes wide, mouths agape. Then a chorus of indignation erupted. "Hey, watch where you're going," shouted a fruit vendor. "That's an old man you splashed," cried another voice from across the street. But the car didn't move. It rolled forward slowly, stopped a few meters ahead, and the tinted window on the passenger side slid down with a mechanical hiss. A woman's voice drifted out, sharp, confident, careless. "You shouldn't be sitting that close to the road, old man. This isn't your dusty village." And the window rolled back up and the Range Rover sped off like nothing had happened. Silence hung in the air like smoke. A man dropped the bag of bread he had just bought. A young woman shook her head in disbelief. "Did she just say that?" someone whispered. "Wicked woman," another murmured, her voice trembling. "She couldn't even apologize." But Uncle Jeremiah raised a hand and said softly, "It's all right. Leave her. Let God handle such matters." He stood slowly, mud dripping from every corner of his body, and began the walk back to his home. Home wasn't far. In fact, it was closer than most would guess. Behind the barber shop, a hidden gate led to a sprawling property tucked away behind tall hedges and old oak trees. The mansion stood with quiet elegance, guarded by simplicity on the outside, but brimming with refinement within. As Uncle Jeremiah pushed open the grand wooden doors, the soft scent of lemon polish and fresh flowers greeted him. The walls were lined with oil paintings, the floors polished to a mirror sheen, but to him, none of that mattered. He stepped inside, removed his soaked sandals, and exhaled deeply. "Caleb?" he called gently. A voice answered from the den. "Yes, Papa?" Caleb walked into the room with a tablet in hand and paused. His eyes widened. "What happened to your shirt?" he asked. "Looks like you swam through a storm." Uncle Jeremiah chuckled, though the weariness in his eyes said otherwise. "Just another encounter with arrogance, my son." Caleb sighed and shook his head. "Papa, again? Why do you keep going out there? You don't have to sweep storefronts. You live here now. You don't need to expose yourself to people like that." Uncle Jeremiah walked over to a cushioned armchair and lowered himself slowly. "Caleb, I won't stop going out there until I find the right woman for you." Caleb stared blankly for a second before setting his tablet down. "Papa, not this again?" "Yes, this again," Jeremiah said firmly. "You're 36 years old. A man needs a partner. Not just someone to take pictures with, but Someone who will build with you, not spend what you've worked for." Caleb rubbed his temples. "Papa, I'm seeing someone." Uncle Jeremiah leaned forward, eyes lighting up. "You are?" "Yes. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to rush things." "Well, now that you've mentioned it, who is she?" "Her name is Trinity. She's beautiful." "Beauty fades, my son. What lies beneath matters more." "I know, Papa. That's why I'm conflicted." Caleb stood and began pacing. "She's stunning, smart, and when she's in a good mood, she can be very sweet. But she's also rude. She looks down on people, Papa. She spends money recklessly. I give her cash for rent. She buys diamond chokers and designer heels. And when she's angry, it's like standing in front of a storm." Jeremiah's gaze turned serious. "Does she respect you?" Caleb hesitated. "Sometimes." "Does she respect herself?" Caleb didn't answer. Jeremiah leaned back, disappointment flickering across his face. "A woman who can't carry her own dignity will never help you carry yours. I've seen it all, Caleb. You need someone who brings peace, not chaos. Someone who multiplies your efforts, not wastes them." "I hear you, Papa. I do." "Then let me meet her. Bring her here as she truly is. No dressing up the truth. Let me see the real woman." Caleb nodded slowly. "Okay. She can come this weekend." "Good," said Uncle Jeremiah. "But don't tell her anything special. Let her walk in like she always would. I want to see her soul, not her show." Caleb chuckled dryly. "You're trying to surprise her?" "No," Jeremiah said with a knowing look. "I want her to surprise herself." The following day, Uncle Jeremiah returned to the city streets dressed in his usual way, clean but humble. He sat near the entrance of a supermarket, a plastic bowl beside him, though he never asked anyone for money. People passed, a few dropped coins, others avoided eye contact. Then, the now familiar growl of a black Range Rover cut through the air. It stopped with a sharp halt, music booming from the inside. The driver's door opened. Trinity stepped out in a blaze of perfume and attitude, her stilettos clacking like drum beats of dominance. Her eyes fell on Uncle Jeremiah. "You again?" she spat. "You dirty old disgrace. Why do you keep embarrassing your ancestors like this?" She didn't wait for an answer. "You enjoy sitting here like livestock? You poor people have no shame." Still, Uncle Jeremiah said nothing. "Look at your face. You're probably cursed. You're the reason this country's backward. Useless relic." As she turned to leave, a young woman holding 2 bags of groceries stepped out from the store. She paused, observing the scene, then slowly set her bags down. "Enough," she said calmly. Trinity spun around. "Who the hell are you?" "Someone with manners," the woman replied. "Another broke cockroach trying to act like a queen," Trinity sneered. "You're attacking an old man who did nothing to you," the woman responded, voice rising. "What does he gain by existing?" Trinity barked. "He makes the city uglier. He's old enough to be your father," the woman said, stepping forward. "So? Is he my father? Probably yours. You look broke too." The woman smiled sadly. "Then at least I have a father with dignity." Trinity glared. "Do you know who I am?" "Loud, not kind," the woman said. "You've got volume but no value." Trinity's face twisted with rage. "You'll regret this." "Maybe," the woman said softly. "But one day, this same man will be the one you'll need to kneel to." Trinity's voice cracked. "Security!" Call someone. You should call a mirror, the woman said. You need it more. Without another word, Trinity stormed back into her car and drove away. The woman turned to Uncle Jeremiah and gently asked, "Are you all right, sir?" He nodded slowly. "Thank you, my daughter." She smiled. "I couldn't just walk away." He studied her face, her spirit. "What's your name?" "Jasmine," he smiled. "That's a beautiful name." She sat beside him. "And you?" "Jeremiah, but most call me Uncle Jeremiah." She looked into his eyes. "Where do you stay, Uncle?" He hesitated. "Behind the old warehouse on Pine Street. The owner lets me use a corner to sleep. It's not much, but I'm grateful." She looked down. "That's not right. A man like you deserves better." "Life isn't about what we deserve," he said. "It's about what we make with what we're given." "I studied agriculture," she said quietly. "Graduated last year. No job. Parents are farmers. We struggle." He nodded. "You are trying." "I was thinking," she began, eyes thoughtful, "maybe we can plant something behind the warehouse. Tomatoes, peppers, okra, just to eat. Maybe even sell a little." Uncle Jeremiah looked stunned. "You want to help me farm?" "Yes, I have no money, but I have energy. I can work. Better than waiting around for luck." His eyes misted. "You're too kind." "No," she said, "just human." He watched her, silently. "You didn't even know me," he whispered. "I knew enough," she said with a soft smile. "You let a storm pass over you without anger. That tells me everything." He smiled slowly. "You're different." "I try," she said. "I really do." As she stood and picked up her groceries, she added, "I'll come tomorrow. Let's see what we can grow, Papa." "I'll be here," he said. "Good. Don't go missing," she teased. As she walked away, something unfamiliar bloomed in his chest. Not shame, not sorrow, hope. The sun had not yet climbed fully into the sky when Uncle Jeremiah awoke with a purpose he hadn't felt in years. He had bathed early, scrubbed the remnants of yesterday's mud from his skin, and now sat in the large living room of the mansion, wearing a freshly ironed white shirt and dark brown trousers. The house was quiet, with only the soft hum of the air conditioner and the occasional chirp of birds outside breaking the stillness. Yet inside him, everything was alive. His mind wasn't on the ornate rug beneath his feet or the grand chandelier overhead. His mind was on Jasmine, the young woman who had sat beside him like he mattered, who had offered not pity, but partnership, who had looked past his slippers and his silence and offered to farm with him, not for charity, but for dignity. He sat forward slightly, his fingers intertwined, waiting. Caleb entered the room moments later, still tying his watch. "Papa," he said, voice soft. Uncle Jeremiah turned slowly. "Is she coming today?" Caleb nodded. "She's on her way." Uncle Jeremiah didn't blink. "Let her come." They sat in silence. Minutes later, the sound of tires rolling into the compound echoed through the long hallway. Uncle Jeremiah didn't move. Caleb stood, watching the door. Then the handle turned, the door opened, and Trinity walked in. Her heels tapped confidently against the tiled floor, her designer bag swinging at her side. She scanned the room, a subtle smirk on her lips, then spotted the old man sitting calmly on the couch. She froze. The smirk fell. Her eyes widened, lips parted slightly as her brain scrambled to process the collision of two worlds. Uncle Jeremiah remained still. Trinity heaved a breath and looked at Caleb. He smiled and gestured. "Papa." I know who she is," Uncle Jeremiah said, his tone cut in the air like a blade. Trinity stepped back half a pace. "You do?" "Yes," he replied. "We've met before. Twice." Caleb looked between them, confusion spreading. "Wait. What? You know my father?" Trinity's lips trembled. I didn't know. I didn't know he was your father. You didn't need to know," Uncle Jeremiah said, rising slowly from the couch. "You only needed to show respect." Caleb's eyes narrowed. "What is going on here? Tell me what happened." Trinity tried to speak, but her mouth gave her nothing. Uncle Jeremiah turned to Caleb. "This woman, your girlfriend, splashed mud on me at the roadside, then mocked me for sitting near the street. She insulted me like I was less than human. Yesterday she did it again in front of the supermarket." Caleb looked at Trinity, searching her eyes for denial, for defense, for truth. "Is this true?" She swallowed. "I didn't know he was your father." "That's not the point," Caleb said sharply. "Even if he was a stranger, is that how you treat people?" "I thought he was a beggar," she whispered. "He's a human being," Caleb snapped. Trinity's voice cracked. "I didn't mean it. I was upset. No," Uncle Jeremiah interrupted. "You said it because that's who you are. When you believe someone is beneath you, you do not hold back. You're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry for who I am." Trinity looked at the floor, her hands clenched tightly at her sides. "I can change." "Please." Caleb stepped back. "You told me you loved me." She nodded. "I do." "No," he said, "you will love yourself, because the woman who loves me will respect the man who raised me." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I'm begging you. Forgive me." Uncle Jeremiah looked at her, the way one might look at a painting that once brought joy but had now become unrecognizable. "Forgiveness is easy," he said, "but trust? That takes more than apologies." Trinity grabbed her bag, turned without another word, and walked out. The silence she left behind filled every corner of the mansion. Caleb stood frozen. Uncle Jeremiah sat back down, hands folded again. "Papa," he said quietly, "you were right." Uncle Jeremiah said nothing. That evening, as the sun began to dip behind the trees and the sky turned orange, Caleb and his father sat in the backyard. "Papa, I met someone today." Uncle Jeremiah turned to him slowly, heart already beating faster. "Who?" "She's different. She's not flashy. She's not loud. She was planting seeds in a small plot of land behind a store. She talked about helping someone build a small farm." Uncle Jeremiah smiled, the corners of his mouth rising with a quiet joy. "What's her name?" "Jasmine." Caleb said the name like a prayer. The old man closed his eyes briefly and whispered, "Yes, I know her." "You do?" "She's the one I told you about, the one who defended me, the one who offered to plant with me." Caleb stared ahead at the sunset. "I didn't know all that. I felt something when I saw her, something peaceful. She reminded me of home, of calm, of what love should feel like." Uncle Jeremiah nodded. "Then you must bring her here, but do it simply. Let her be herself. I want to see if the heart I saw by the roadside is the same one you saw in the soil." Caleb smiled faintly. "I think it will be." The next morning, Jasmine stood in front of the mansion gate with a simple handbag and a heart full of questions. The address Uncle Jeremiah had given her was written on a folded piece of paper in her hand. She checked it again. Surely this was a mistake. The gate was too grand, the walls too smooth, the building beyond too polished. A security guard appeared. "Yes?" she asked, nervous. "I'm here to see Uncle Jeremiah. He gave me this address." The man looked her over, then nodded. "Wait here." Minutes passed. Then the gates opened slowly. "Come in." Jasmine walked inside, her sandals barely making a sound on the marble walkway. She stood at the wide entrance, overwhelmed by the beauty surrounding her. Then she heard footsteps. Jasmine. She turned and froze. Caleb stood there, simple, smiling, and impossibly familiar. "You?" she whispered. "You live here?" Before he could answer, another voice came from behind him. "My daughter." She looked past Caleb and saw Uncle Jeremiah, smiling warmly, arms open. "Papa?" Her eyes widened. "You live here?" "You told me you slept behind a shop." He nodded, calm as ever. "Because I wanted to see how people treated me when they thought I had nothing." She looked between the two men, blinking rapidly. "Wait, you're his son?" Caleb nodded slowly. "Yes, I don't understand," Jasmine said, voice trembling. Uncle Jeremiah stepped forward. "I'm sorry for hiding the truth, but you showed me something this world rarely gives. You treated me with respect, with kindness, without knowing who I was. That means everything to me." Jasmine's lips parted. "I didn't do anything special." "You did," Caleb said gently. "You did more than most would dare." Jasmine's eyes glistened. "So what happens now?" Uncle Jeremiah smiled. Now we welcome you home." Jasmine looked from one man to the other. She had no words, only wonder, only gratitude, only the feeling that maybe, just maybe, this unexpected twist of fate was the beginning of something she had never dreamed possible. That night, Trinity sat alone in her luxury penthouse, her fingers angrily tapping against the glass of her wine. The city lights outside didn't soothe her. The air felt tight, her chest even tighter. Bernard, no. Caleb was marrying some barefoot village girl. A nobody. A farm girl. A girl who had likely never stepped foot inside a real boutique, who didn't even own perfume worth her own earrings. Her fists clenched at the thought. It wasn't just insult. It was war. She had invested too much pride, too many months pretending to care, too many staged pictures, too many stolen gifts. And now that low-budget girl was going to wear the ring that should have been hers? No. Trinity picked up her phone and dialed a number she hadn't used in a while, a SCO. He answered on the second ring. "Who's this?" "Trinity." "Oh." His voice flattened. "I need a job done." "What kind of job?" "Two jobs, actually. First, I want you to plant hard drugs inside Caleb's office, enough to destroy his public image. Second, that girl Jasmine. Make sure she never shows up at the wedding. And that old man? Jeremiah? Erase him. I don't want to see his pitiful face again." SCO didn't speak. Trinity leaned forward, her voice now bitter and cold. "I'll pay you anything, just handle it, and do it quickly." She hung up before he could respond. Then she sat back with a smile, believing she had sealed her revenge with money. What she didn't know was that SCO wasn't the same man she remembered. Years ago, when his family had hit rock bottom when his mother fell ill, his sister dropped out of school, and they were thrown out of their house, it was Caleb who stepped in. Quietly, discreetly, without needing a thank you. He paid their rent for a year, found his sister a job, even arranged medical help. SCO had never forgotten. That night, he sat in the dark, staring at the phone screen, replaying Trinity's words in his mind. The woman who had once laughed at his accent and mocked his shoes was now asking him to destroy the man who had saved his family. No, not happening. But instead of ignoring her, he called her back, this time with the call on record. "Hello?" she said. "Tell me the plan again," Sko said, his voice neutral. "I need the full details." Trinity, proud of her power, laughed coldly and spilled everything. The drugs, the break-in, the plan to frame Caleb, the hate for Jasmine, the desire to wipe Uncle Jeremiah off the earth. She didn't hold back. When she was done, she hung up again, thinking she had secured silence, but Sko saved the recording. And the next morning, he walked straight into Caleb's office. Caleb was on a call, busy finalizing venue arrangements for the wedding, when the receptionist knocked. "There's a man here to see you. Says it's important." "Let him in," Caleb said. Sko entered, wearing a simple black jacket, eyes steady. "You may not remember me," he said. Caleb looked up, curious. "I do. You're Sko. You used to come with your sister to our outreach programs. We helped with housing." Sko nodded. "And now it's time for me to return the favor." Caleb leaned forward. "Go on." Sko pulled out his phone, opened the recording, and pressed play. Trinity's voice filled the room like poison. She sounded proud, evil, untouchable. Caleb's face slowly changed. His fingers tightened around the edge of the desk. By the end of the recording, he stood, jaw locked, breath heavy. She was going to do all that to destroy me? Sko nodded. "And Jasmine. And your father." Caleb shook his head. "She's not just broken. She's dangerous." Sko stood. "I thought you deserved to know before it was too late." Caleb looked at him deeply. "Thank you. You may have saved all our lives." That afternoon, officers from the district's special unit arrested Trinity at an upscale restaurant where she was showing off new heels and sipping imported tea. "What's going on?" she shouted as handcuffs clicked around her wrists. "You're under arrest for conspiracy, attempted framing, and solicitation of murder," the officer said. "You got the wrong person," she cried. But at the station, when they played the recording aloud, even her expensive lawyer went silent. She sat there, stunned, the weight of her own voice crashing over her. "I was angry," she said weakly. "I didn't mean it." "But you said it," the officer replied, in detail, without hesitation. Trinity tried tears, begged, blamed stress, claimed mental health. Nothing worked. Her trial began a week later. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, bloggers, influencers, everyone had a seat. The judge was firm, the prosecutor ruthless. "Miss Trinity," he said on the second day, "do you deny the voice in this recording is yours?" "It was edited," she lied. "Really?" he said, raising an eyebrow. "Then why is your lawyer begging for a reduced sentence?" Trinity looked away. The recording played again. Her voice rang loud and sharp. The jury listened, stone-faced. When the final sentence echoed, "Make sure that old man never shows his face again," the room froze. Trinity began to cry. "Please," she said to the judge. It was a moment of madness. "No," he replied. "It was a moment of truth." On the third day, she was found guilty on all counts. 15 years. No bail. When they led her away, she screamed Caleb's name, but he wasn't in the room. He was home, with his father and Jasmine, holding her hand as he told her everything. Jasmine's eyes filled with tears. "She wanted me dead?" Caleb nodded. "And Papa, too." Uncle Jeremiah sat back in his chair, eyes closed. The wicked dig graves for others and fall into them themselves. Jasmine trembled. "It could have all ended, but it didn't," Caleb whispered, pulling her closer, "because good people still exist." That weekend, they traveled to Jasmine's village. Her parents welcomed them with shy warmth. Caleb, in his finest native wear, knelt before them. "I love your daughter. I want to marry her, and I want you both to leave the village, come live in the city. I have a house waiting. Your days of suffering are over." Jasmine's mother wept. Her father lifted both hands and blessed him with joy. A month later, they were married. The ceremony was not flashy, but it was beautiful. Jasmine walked down the aisle in a modest white dress, glowing like sunrise. Uncle Jeremiah stood proudly beside her, holding her hand like she had once held his. As they exchanged vows, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Love, real love, had grown from a seed of kindness planted on a muddy street. After the wedding, Caleb and Jasmine left for a quiet beach town. They walked barefoot on the sand, hand in hand. "Do you believe in fate?" she asked. "I believe in timing," he said, "and God's way of humbling the proud while lifting the humble." She smiled. "I still can't believe all this started because you were sitting on a bench in the rain." "No," he whispered, looking at her. "It started when you decided to speak up for someone who couldn't fight back." As the waves crashed softly and the sky turned gold, they kissed gently beneath a palm tree, surrounded by nothing but peace. It was the ending Trinity never expected, and the beginning Jasmine never dared to dream. 3 months after the wedding, the house that once felt large and quiet now pulsed with life. Jasmine's parents had moved into one of Caleb's smaller but cozy homes near the Garden District, a quiet neighborhood lined with orange trees and hummingbirds. Her father tended to the backyard like it was a sacred temple, growing spinach, okra, and mint that perfumed the whole street. Her mother often sat in the kitchen with Uncle Jeremiah, exchanging old recipes, sharing laughter over bitter leaf tea. Caleb had insisted they take weekly health checkups, and though they resisted at first, they now enjoyed the soft pampering of city life, the air conditioning, the slow mornings, the fruit baskets that magically appeared at their door. But Jasmine, despite her new surroundings, refused to let go of her roots. Every morning she woke up before sunrise, wrapped her scarf over her hair, and headed to the small plot of land behind an abandoned building near the church. That was where she had first offered Uncle Jeremiah the idea of planting, and now it had become something greater. The okra plants stood proud. The tomatoes dangled ripe and red. Spinach leaves fanned wide under the morning sun. But more than that, it had become a place of gathering. Young boys came after school to help water. Mothers came to buy fresh herbs. Sometimes Uncle Jeremiah just came to sit and watch. Jasmine paid them all in harvest and kindness. No one went home empty-handed. Caleb would often sneak up behind her with a juice bottle and wipe sweat off her forehead while she scolded him for showing up in leather shoes. He loved that space more than any of his boardrooms. It reminded him that not all things of value are counted in profit. One afternoon, as she rested under a neem tree near the garden's edge, Jasmine turned to him and asked, "Are you happy?" Caleb looked at her, eyes reflecting the sky. "More than I've ever been. But only because I didn't marry for my eyes. I married for my soul." She laughed. "You almost didn't meet me." "Or I almost ignored you," he replied. "It took mud and madness to lead me to mercy. You think we were meant to meet that way?" "No," he said. "I think we were meant to meet the way we treated each other. The rest was just scenery." Jasmine smiled, then grew quiet. "Sometimes I wonder," she said, "if Trinity hadn't done what she did, would you have ever seen me?" Caleb reached out and held her hand. "You didn't need her to shine. but her shadow made your light stand out. Even God sometimes uses darkness to direct us. The wind blew gently around them, rustling the cornstalks. The sound felt like applause from the heavens. One day, months later, Jasmine was invited to speak at a local youth seminar. The theme was courage and kindness. She stepped onto the small stage in her usual floral dress and worn sandals. No makeup, just calm eyes and a steady voice. She told them about a man who sat silently near a supermarket. A man who was drenched in mud and ridicule but didn't raise his voice. A man who was secretly a father, a teacher, a bridge. And how kindness, given without condition, had opened doors even power could not. People cried, people clapped. Someone posted the video online. It went viral within 2 days. Millions watched. Thousands commented. Messages poured in from around the world. Stories of strangers helped, elders respected, moments of quiet bravery. Jasmine didn't read most of them. She was too busy planting more onions. But Caleb watched the impact with awe. He knew he had married a woman of action, not applause. That same week, Uncle Jeremiah sat outside the house with his cane, sipping from a cup of hot cocoa. Jasmine came and sat beside him. "Papa," she said, "I think I'm pregnant." His eyes lit up like dawn. He didn't shout. He didn't stand. He just reached over and held her hand. "You've already given us so much," he said softly, "and now God has given you more." "Are you ready to be a great-grandfather?" she asked, teasing. "I was born ready," he replied, smiling. Months later, when the baby came a little girl with her mother's lips and her grandfather's eyes, Uncle Jeremiah held her in his arms and whispered, "You're the proof that love never wastes its time." They named her Grace, not for how she looked, but for what she reminded them of. That redemption often arrives in simple clothing. That wealth can be measured by what you grow and give, not what you own. That a seat on a muddy bench might bring more purpose than a throne on a hill. And in the quiet of that home, with family around and the garden blooming just beyond the window, Caleb and Jasmine often sat in the evenings watching the baby sleep. They didn't always speak. Sometimes the silence said enough. Because from the moment she stood up to defend an old man, and from the moment he chose humility over pride, they had rewritten what legacy means. And to this day, in that corner of the city, people still whisper about the girl who farmed her way into a billionaire's heart, and the billionaire who knelt not for wealth, but for wisdom.